So God does not have a universally chosen people. Why then in the Old Testament do we see so much blood and so much gore and, all the slavery and all this type of stuff? Well, first of all, the slavery is its own thing. Okay, you got to understand. Okay, but second of all, you got to understand, if you think this realm is a God-forsaken, evil, twisted place these days, you have no idea how it was back in those days. The Jews and the Canaanites and the fucking people in Egypt and all kinds of people everywhere were fucking evil. They had slaves, and they sacrificed their children to all kinds of fucked up idols and stuff like that. What people got to understand is that just like karma exists today, karma also existed in those days. It's not that the Jews were some great people. They were the most oppressed people. The people who were, let me rephrase that. I say Jew, when I say Jew, I really mean Semitic people, the people who were under the authority of the hierarchy at that time. You see what I'm saying? And, people have many, many lifetimes. A lot of people might ask the question, if God is real, why does God cause so much suffering? And what we got to understand is that we are not this body. Our story is like a book, and right now we are in the book, living out the pages of the book. But when we die and we go to a higher realm, we don't see it from that perspective. We don't see it from this perspective of, oh my God, my son or daughter or granddad or father or whatever got cancer. Curse ye God. We don't see it from that perspective. We see it from a holistic perspective. We see it from a perspective of what we truly are, which is spirit. And we understand the context that when something happened in this life, it caused, us to have the experience of what happened in the life that we just lived. See, we live in the perspective of the page that we live on. That's the problem. We don't live in a soul perspective, because if we lived in a soul perspective, we would realize that ultimately all the crap that happens in this realm is just a learning experience. But because people are materialistic and because people believe they only got one life, they think that's them. They think that's what they are. But that's not what we are. You know what I mean? It's like when a pill is sitting on the table and a baby's going to go grab it, and you take that pill away from the baby. You might even spank the baby to tell it not to go grabbing pills, and the baby don't fucking understand. The damn baby thinks you're wicked, but you ain't wicked. You're trying to keep it from, keep a bigger problem from happening. And that's what we need to understand, about the Bible, is that a lot of the things that was happening in the Old Testament was to keep a bigger problem from happening. And what they was trying to do, okay, the Semitic people were some of the most oppressed people, and they were oppressed by the people around them. God had warned, if you don't keep my commandments, there's going to be that karma, but everybody has karma. And people have a certain amount of karma that they're able to take, that God will allow them to take. And once that karma is up, and once it's no longer able to be taken by those people, God has to take action. And when we see Yahweh, you know, he comes down, you know, in the form of the burning bush, you know. Some of these people that existed at that time, you know, they were very primitive people, you know. So there's certain parts in the Bible where it says that God, you know, it says Yahweh. That's how you properly pronounce Yahweh. And it's not Yahweh, by the way. It's Yahweh. It's two different vowels. He said, you know, it says an eye for the eye. That'll be the law, right? And people think that's a license to violence, but what that really means is if you get your eye, if you poke somebody's eye out, your eye is going to be poked out. It don't necessarily mean that if somebody pokes your eye out, you're going to poke it out. But what it means is that one way or another, there's going to be a balance in the law. There's going to be perfection. And, you know, people point to the Jews saying that they had a bloodthirsty God and all this stuff, but the people that they took the land from were not an oppressed people. And they had the same type of evil shit going on as the Jews did. They sacrificed babies to idols and did all kinds of blood sacrifices and stuff just like everybody else. So, you know, people make it look like a crime scene, you know. These people stealing land and all this type of stuff, but these people had their land and they had their families taken away from them and they were sold to Egypt. And, you know, none of this is good. None of the stuff that happened in the Bible is good. The cause isn't necessarily good, and the effect isn't necessarily good on a moral level. But people don't understand karma, and this stuff is so much more complex than people like to think. You know, I could get into, you know, I could learn the Bible better and I could understand, you know, better than, you know, what the point is, you know, of the blood sacrifices and stuff like that. I don't think that was what people thought it was, you know, because there's certain parts in the Bible where it says God never asked for a sacrifice, right? But, you know, it's a complicated thing, but see what people also don't realize, you know, a lot of these chosen people, these chosen prophets and stuff like that, they didn't come from this damn planet. They didn't come from this world. You know, there was a great master one time that told, you know, there was a young man that wanted to be a disciple of this master. And the master said, "You are not advanced enough to be my disciple." Right. Basically saying he's unfit to be in his presence. And so the man said, "Okay, if I'm not going to be your disciple, I'm going to go jump off that mountain." The master said, "Go do it." He jumped off the mountain, and there was a man who said, "Okay, bring me his arm," or something like that. From the arm, he reconstructed the entire body. Here's the thing. If you're not ready for that level of truth, you know, and you're not at the point where this life no longer means anything to you, and you understand that truth, and you're willing to sacrifice yourself for that truth, then all this stuff is going to look wicked to you, because you still think you're the body. You still think that's the message. You know, and people really got to get out of this idea that we're the body, and, you know, this life is who we are, and, you know, and that it's ultimately going to matter. It's not that you're supposed to be cold. You're not supposed to be cold and, you know, not care for other people, but you're not caring for, you know, the physicality of the person. You're caring for, you know, their soul. You know, when you do good things for people on this realm, it's not just, you know, for them, it's also for their soul. Mainly. And people got to get a balance, because there's a lot of people that think Yahweh's evil, but Elohim in the Bible is not evil. But yet, if you read Deuteronomy, the God in there is Yahweh. Yahweh. So, or Yahweh. So, in that case, he all he's teaching is basically love and kindness. Seems like it's inconsistent to some people, but they don't understand. He's given his character to the people, right? But they don't have his character, right? The law of karma is not necessarily reward and punishment. It's to teach. If you send out a certain energy, that energy has to come back to you in some way, shape, or form. So, people who say innocent people were killed, and people who say innocent people were poor people who had to work for these families, aka so-called slaves, which they weren't, they don't understand fucking law of karma. I mean, there was a man in a concentration camp one time who was telling the truth, and somebody tried to shoot him, and the gun wouldn't even go off because it wasn't his karma to die. So people who claim that that it's not these people's fault, they don't understand. They don't understand the law of karma. I mean, that's all there is to it.